Welcome to Mentoring Moments. Mentoring Moments is a sub-series of the E-Commerce Edge podcast. It is composed of clips taken from Jason's one-to-one and group mentorship sessions. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the E-Commerce Edge podcast. It is my pleasure to welcome Mr. Andy Seeley to the podcast, and he is the CEO of both Creatively Disruptive as well as the CEO of Ashworth Strategy. Welcome to the podcast, Andrew.
Thank you. I'm very glad to be here. Very happy to see you.
And we were talking off air. We had a pretty lengthy conversation off air about the fact that you're actually a Kiwi, originally from New Zealand, moved to the US in 99, and I moved to Mexico from New Zealand after 28 plus years living in New Zealand. Kiwi wife, Kiwi brother-in-law, Kiwi grandfather, moved to Mexico in 2023. So certainly we've crossed ocean paths along the way.
We have. So yeah, and we spoke about the different countries and how they're all over the place. And I think you probably agree with this and works a little bit into the podcast, is the power of being able to work wherever you want is a very underrated. Even though I think a lot of people do rate it, I think it's surprising how different your life is when you can literally work wherever you want, because things change and sometimes foundations need to be pulled up and put somewhere else. And you've lived that. I've lived that more of in the United States. We've moved around in different places, but moving from New Zealand to Mexico is quite the move.
It's a big jump, but I think you make a very good point, which is that I didn't just want to optimize for financial freedom, which was always a priority in my life. Never was a big fan of debt, was always had a paranoid aversion to debt because I feel like that ties you down in weird ways. It makes you make life decisions that you wouldn't otherwise make. If you've got a big mortgage you got to pay, or a big car payment you got to pay, or big student loan debt you got to pay it. It removes optionality from your life in ways that not having debt doesn't. But the other thing was I always wanted to optimize for location freedom. And I was just always lucky that for the last 25 years, I've worked in digital. And as a result of that, we could always work remotely. Now, sometimes customers didn't think we could, and they expected to be able to come to your office and shake hands and eyeball you up and down and sit around the boardroom table and pitch to them and everything else. But luckily, even the last vestiges of that, COVID put paid to that. And I like my clients, occasionally I will see my clients, like if I'm traveling in their neck of the woods, I'll go to their office and I'll catch up with them, but they have zero expectation that they will ever see me in person. Now, if it happens, it's great and it's a bonus, but they don't ever have the expectation anymore that before they'll sign on the dotted line to work with me, that they need to eyeball me in person and shake my hand. And that's the benefit of COVID, I think.
Yeah, I think definitely if you're selling digital services and so forth, I don't think there are a few, but I would say it'd be a 1% that expect to see you in an office. But even the non-digital stuff is now getting that way. I've got my best man, he works in the product manufacturer kind of industry, like an e-commerce brand needs something created, supplements created, or something, some kind of mix of stuff together, like chemistry mix. He works mainly in that field, but he is totally remote too. And he's not necessarily an online service, he's a product manufacturer. So it's definitely going down that route. I think it's definitely the way a lot of people want to go. Sometimes I wonder if there are downsides to it, right? I found myself sometimes I've spent looking at my watch and going, shit, I haven't left the house for a week.
Yeah.
I haven't seen anybody apart from my family for 4 days. And that's maybe a little bit of the downside. But hey, with that, you can choose to push yourself out in ways that something other than, there's a lot more to life than being in an office space and seeing the same 20 people every day. Go and do things, go and make things happen. You can have the choice to sit in your office space. I know there was a period when I lived in San Diego and I realized this happened and I was like, okay, I've got to change this. I've got to make something else. I've got to give myself a reason to get out of the house, because I literally spent 2 weeks without leaving the house.
Wow.
Because of my or anything. I was just working.
I
was just busy working, and you'd get up in the morning, you'd work, and then it was the evening. My wife would go out and she was getting groceries and she worked out. She's a gymnastics, so she would go out and coach gymnastics, and she'd pick up stuff and bring it back, and I would be working from 8 in the morning till 8 at night, and then I'd just like chill and then go to bed. And that happened for 2
Yes.
weeks. I was like, holy moly, I need to get out and maybe go to the beach or go for a walk or do something.
Yeah, I tell you that's so true, and I tell you, especially after COVID, I used to go to a lot of conferences and events and activities pre-COVID, and then during COVID, it was almost like a bit of a relief that I didn't feel like I needed to go to these things, and we couldn't go to these things. But then after COVID ended, it was like, man, I really miss mixing with my people, right? In my industry. And I'm doing
Right.
more conferences now than I ever was pre-COVID. I've already been to like 4 or 5 conferences this year, and I've got 2 more conferences in November that I'll be going to and speaking at before the end of the year. We went to Europe for a big conference over there and everything else this year. And I'm finding that that is my outlet for being able to get out of the office and mixing with my people and being able to
Right.
even potentially meet clients and just opportunities and partnerships and all those other things that it's difficult to replicate that purely online. Those quiet moments over a beer together, those quiet moments over a dinner together, those moments where everybody's guard is down a little bit more, they're a little bit more honest, they're a little bit more transparent, they're a little bit more, hey, this is what's working for me, what's working for you, this is what isn't working for me, how have you solved this? It's that level of vulnerability that you get in that person to person connection that is really difficult to replicate to that level online. And that's the thing I struggle, because as someone who's a massive extrovert and who gets massive energy from being around people,
People.
it's hard.
Yeah.
You just can't replicate that online.
No, you can't. There's a Joe Rogan episode just dropped with Konstantin Kisin and the trigonometry guys. And he was actually talking about that, how it's really funny how we don't want to have anything to do with each other, but we really desperately do.
Yeah.
And that how in a Zoom meeting, like online, me and you, if I didn't know you and we're arguing, we might say the most awful things to each other, but if we're sitting across from each other, that goes away. You don't threaten to stab someone in the neck, which on Twitter every 5 minutes,
Yes.
right? That same conversation would be very different face to face. And basically, what Joe was saying was that we weren't really designed to communicate and have relationships online. We were designed to have relationships and communicate face to face. And it's just a very different thing that we're trying to do. Now saying that, that's the downside maybe of the online stuff. I went to London 2 weeks ago and I was working. I have a team of 20 staff. I was walking around London, working, right? I had earpiece in, phone calls would come in, I'd chat with them, and I was like taking photos of Big Ben as I was like talking to my staff and answering questions. And I sat down in a little cafe and did a little bit of work and did some stuff. And I spent the whole day by myself walking around London, trying to kill time because it was something I had to do in the evening. But I arrived at 6 a.m. in the morning. And then my first event was like at 6 p.m. But it was great. I really felt invigorated that I was walking around. There's people all around me. I was still working. That really came home to me that, hey, I'm very lucky. I get to choose actually, because most of my staff are actually in Arizona. Probably half of my staff are in Arizona. So I do actually see them. We're all remote. Although we do fly in everybody once a year and we actually get together face to face and connect,
Yeah.
right? Because I do think as business owners, digital business owners, it's important to build that camaraderie. It's important to create culture.
Yeah.
I think a lot of e-com businesses oftentimes, right? They're so focused on selling their widgets or goods or services, and they forget a little bit that sometimes culture is as important as profit margins, right? Profits obviously the lifeblood of everything, cash flow, but without any kind of like substance to it, sometimes at some point you're going to be like, do I really want to do this?
Yeah.
I've got to say the culture that we have in Creatively Disruptive is the thing that keeps me fighting when it's hard. If I didn't have the culture, if I didn't enjoy the people that work for us, if I didn't enjoy the clients that we work with, and I didn't see them. Most of our clients I've actually personally met either at conferences or by visits or whatever. If I didn't have those relationships, when the going gets tough, much more likely to go, is this worth it? I don't know. I'd rather just be sitting on a beach somewhere
Yeah.
in New Zealand, getting paid unemployment benefit and doing nothing.
Yeah, or the New Zealand pension or whatever,
You call it.
whatever, Kiwi Saver or whatever that is nowadays. But yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that, especially now that for the last 5+ years, I've doubled and tripled and quadrupled down on B2B e-commerce, which is where it's a unique beast to retail e-commerce, and it is so human driven. It is so relationship driven. It is account managed. Those relationships in B2B, they're not just transactional relationships. They're long-term, massively high AOV, massively high CLV, typically just default in the industry, because you have these relationships that last 5, 10, 20 years in the B2B world, from manufacturer to distributor to maybe a dealer or retail. So these relationships are so long standing, and they're so difficult to initiate in the beginning and to form those relationships, that personal side of business is just part and parcel in that world, where it's much more transactional in the retail e-commerce world. It's I'm going to get that conversion here and now, and my AOV might be $50 or $100 or whatever it is, but I'm not going to count on that be back bus. So I got to be profitable from transaction one with these customers, and of course I'm going to try to retain them. Of course I'm going to try to reconvert them. I'm going to try to remarket to them, all that sort of stuff. But certainly the acquisition mindset of retail e-commerce is totally different to the B2B world, because in the B2B world, I'm trying to acquire an account. I'm not trying to acquire a customer. And it's a very different mindset in that world as a result.
You're trying to acquire an account that could be paying you every month for 10 years,
Correct.
Right? I actually had dinner with the very first client that we ever had as a customer, who's still a client of ours today. And she spent hundreds of thousands of dollars with us.
Yes.
We've taken her from being a little tiny business that's doing about $500,000 a year. She's up to about 3 million. She went from making $1,500 a month to making about $500,000 a year.
Wow.
And that relationship has actually turned into a personal friendship.
Yes.
Right? And you never get a personal friendship when you're selling widgets from an retail e-commerce standpoint. But we got 106 clients, right? Those guys stay because of the relationships that we build with them, the changes we make to their lives, right? I don't know. We have some e-com brands that we work with. Those e-com brands probably couldn't honestly argue that they've changed the direction of someone's life by purchasing their product. What I love about what we've done is we've changed hundreds of clients' lives for the better. We've helped clients come from like next to nothing to large exits.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of our clients are family. A lot of them we've got a lot of kids activity centers and so forth that work with us as well. And I've seen them go from opening to selling for $2 million in a 6-year period and making a whole bunch of money in between. And that's a special thing. Wow, I've made $2 million nowadays. You might think, that doesn't sound like a lot. The reality is, if I put $2 million in someone's bank account, that's a lot.
Yeah. You can
retire
on that at 10% a year in just dividends alone. You can make $200,000 a year just off of without touching the principal.
Like without any interest or anything, that's the equivalent of getting paid $100,000 a year for 20 years.
Yeah, wild, isn't it?
Right. And when we think about like mergers and acquisitions and so forth, you think 2 million, that's not a huge number. But the reality for an individual, it's a major number, right? And that is that's one of the things I really love about this business, is helping people get to that point where they can exit. We have an exit strategy ourselves. If someone came along and threw $8 million at me, I might look at selling our business. Yeah. 8 million, if I'm talking about 2 million actually being like 8 million, like you said, if you get a 10% return on it, it's $800,000 a year. I'd like to say I'm earning $800,000 a year right now. I'm not earning $800,000. I'm doing pretty good, but I'm not earning $800,000.
Yes.
But those things are absolutely doable. And I agree with you, Jason. It's the B2B digital stuff is a different beast, but so rewarding.
It absolutely is. And if we look back at your past, like if I look back at your past, I wouldn't have naturally thought, when you started Creatively Disruptive a decade ago, I wouldn't necessarily have looked back at that and gone, oh, he's going to go into digital. You owned a gymnastics academy. You had a publishing company. I wouldn't have it wouldn't be like to just look at your history. But it's kind of like me. I went from hospitality into digital. Right. Like that makes that feels like a wild leap.
You know what? There's probably there's a stream from somewhere that took you there, yes. Right? So for me, the publishing, my wife is the gymnastics professional. She is the reason why I'm still in America 26 years later, because I met this hot gymnastics
And you
coach
thought, man,
back
you were
in
you were like, I'm punching above my weight. I'm gonna hang on to her.
this is amazing. So she's the stream and the common thread for the Kids Activity Center business. But from the digital marketing standpoint, that came from the publishing industry. So, right, obviously being in the publishing industry in the early 2000s was a little different to what it is today. And before that, I was in television, right? And before that, my first job was actually working for CarMax, opening CarMax stores across the nation. But then I got into television, then that turned into me going, why am I making all this money for this guy who owns this television station? Why didn't I start my own company? And then I started a publishing company and we printed magazines and stuff, mainly for tourists. But I was like, at the beginning, it was great, but then it was started to get harder and harder as the digital side started to get stronger and stronger. Yeah. And it was like, the constant question was, what are you doing online? And I had to start doing stuff online. And we started with QR codes. We had QR codes in our magazine before people knew what QR codes were, so it was hard to get it to go. Nowadays, everybody would be scanning our magazine, but we'd have QR codes in our magazine with all the restaurants that we would talk about in the magazine. We would have all the activities, everything would have a QR code next to it. And on that QR code, you'd scan it and you'd watch a video, which was maybe about 2-3 minutes long, about us going into that place and showing everything about it.
Wow.
And it was, you go to Getaway Reno Tahoe on YouTube, you'll actually see some of the stuff. We got Getaway San Diego. There's Getaway all over the place. No, it's not. It's in those two places. But if you go there, you'll actually see the videos that we've got. And that kind of brought me to getting a much more closer business relationship with my current business partner, who is actually my cousin's husband, who was a web developer. And we were like, we've got to there's more opportunity out there. And I think we can do what we're doing now, but do it digitally. And people are much more excited about the digital stuff than print. And that's how it moved into what we're doing today. And then we did a lot of, we worked with a lot of restaurants. We did a lot of tourist stuff and hotels and things. And then we just slowly moved away from that as we saw a massive opportunity for the client base that we're doing now, which is more of a local service-based business. There's hundreds of millions of local small service-based customers out there. And there's probably 10 million plus service-based businesses in the United States.
Yes.
But it's a niche that's underserved or poorly treated. And that's why we went after it, if I'm honest with you.
Wow. And what brought about, because you went from creative to disruptive, which was meant to be more of a service provider for those local businesses and filling classes like what you had to fill when you had your academy. So you're like, I understand this world. I understand this business. How do they get customers? How do they retain customers? How do we get in front of more families? How do we get more members? How do we get more classes filled up for people to take, et cetera? So that feels like a natural itch to scratch or a natural market that you had such an intimate knowledge of that it feels like just such a natural place to go. But then you decided to establish Ashworth Strategy, right? And you've been doing that for just over a year. So what precipitated that? It's not a pivot, it's an adjacency, but
it's a slightly different story. We'd been working for a long time. So Ashworth Strategy has actually been around since 2018, just before COVID. And it was owned by a lady called Tamara, and she started it and she wanted to be all e-commerce. We've always done a bit of e-commerce. There's always been, whilst we niche, people have good experiences with us, tell other people, and then people come and say, hey, can you help us? I've got this business. We never turn anybody away, but we put our marketing efforts into a certain niche, but we have all sorts of different, we've had banks, we've got home services companies, we've got e-com companies and so forth, but we're reasonably good at it all. And anyway, Tamara had enough. She wanted to move on and do something different. She's got some other things that she's actually working on. She actually still owns about 10% of Ashworth Strategy.
Okay.
But it was an opportunity to take it over. So we purchased him about a year ago, and we added her team skill set to our team skill set, took over her client base, and that's where that's gone. So we've actually, in our 10 years, we've actually purchased or absorbed or merged with or taken over, well, I guess we're Borg, that we find another agency and we absorb and take on a lot of their staff and roles. So that's how that went. But the reason why we went down that path was, again, it's that hopes and dreams and small business owner that kind of has these hopes and dreams. E-commerce is a really, I would say it's like a cutting edge. It's a hard yard part of the digital marketing business. It's tough business. And what I like about it is that it keeps you really at the forefront of knowing how things are working, at least algorithmically. So I would say upped our game from a smaller business, kind of local service type business marketing standpoint. It's probably by bringing in those additional resources and additional staff members. And that was some of the reason to do it, was like, hey, we already had, I would say, when we brought on Ashworth, we probably already had 4 econ, just because when we brought on Ashworth, we brought on another 30.
Wow.
Thankfully, we brought on this a lot of the staff too, so we were able to keep things going. But that in itself is like, it's steel on steel. It's making us better. It's making us think more. It's making us think outside the box, which I think is good. I also have the belief that, along the lines of what we've spoken about freedom, I think a lot of people are trying to free themselves up from corporate America. I think a lot of people are trying to find that way of having more flexibility in their life and so forth. And I do see e-commerce and coaching and all of that kind of jazz as, it's always been a growth area. It's been probably thriving for at least 10 years, maybe a little bit longer. But I see that doubling down the way people after COVID, where people are like, I got laid off at a drop of a hat. My life totally got upended because of other people's decisions. Maybe I want to have a little bit more control over my own decisions than I had before. And I see that as an opportunity for us to serve those kind of people. And that's why we've expanded out our offering to not just doing the service for them, but we'll do it with them. We'll train them. We have a course, we have train. So anybody that's trying to get into it, we either train them, we'll do it with them. We've got a done with you kind of process. We show them how to do it. We meet with them every week and we do it, or we can do it all for you. And that's because I do think, and you probably know this probably even better than I do, that there's a lot of people out there starting to go, I need to be able to forge my own future and not attach my future to someone else that maybe doesn't have my best interest and my family's best interest at heart. I feel that that's a direction that humanity's heading, especially in the United States, is to be less, I guess, at the mercy of others and to be more at the mercy of themselves, which I like, because I think it's going back to the original founding of the United States, right? That libertarian thing that you're very passionate about. That's all about that.
Yes.
It's about not having to rely on someone else to make sure that you can feed your family.
Well, I mean, I think
that's what we're serving.
I couldn't agree more, and I think that was also one of the motivations for me to go independent five years ago in my own consultancy. Was like, look, after spending years of running and building agencies and running and building brands inside of brands, and then way back at the beginning of my career having my own e-commerce pure play, it was like, I want to get back to being independent. I want to get back to relying on my own personal brand, relying on my own content, relying on my own everything to go out and secure customers, to be able to bring those customers through a pipeline, service them super well, treat them super well, have them refer other new clients to me, and build that personal and professional brand that's independent of reliance on an agency or reliance on a dev team or reliance on anybody. I very specifically, at the beginning of starting what I do now, I was very clear. I don't want to become an agency. I don't want to build an agency. I want to remain as an independent consultant. That's what I want to do. And I saw that there was a real hunger in the market. And the reason why I decided to really niche down super hard on B2B was because I saw that was a massively underserved market and it was massively blue ocean. The e-commerce consulting space for retail, D2C, and B2C e-commerce, there was hundreds of consultants out there. And it was like everybody and their dog was a retailer D2C consultant. There was almost nobody doing B2B consultant. Now it's probably 1 or 2 years, just a tiny bit early into that space, because at the tail end of COVID, yes, businesses started to realize, geez, okay, we're not going to be able to have field sales people all the time, be able to go out and meet customers and go and knock on new doors and all that sort of stuff. So they started to get a little bit more of the religion of digital, but they had to get it into their budget cycles. They had to wait for some people to retire. They had to bring on some new blood and all that sort of stuff. So I felt like a little bit of a voice in the wilderness for the first couple of years of running my business, and it was a little bit lean in the beginning. But the market now, it feels like the whole market has done a 180, and B2Bs en masse now are realizing that digital is a requirement. It's not an option. And I think that,
I agree. I think people now realize, when we started, people thought that digital was something that would be nice to do. Oh, that kind of makes sense. I don't really understand it, but it makes sense. I use the internet. maybe I should be there. There was more of that attitude 2015 also. Nowadays, I think businesses understand that if they're not online, they don't exist when it comes to most people, right? Like my wife, if we're thinking of going somewhere new, where do we go? We go to Google.
Or
We go online.
ChatGPT or Instagram or
Yeah.
whatever.
We're not knocking on the door of our neighbors and saying, do you know a good restaurant, or picking up a newspaper or looking for something. It's just not how it is. It's all online. And the new discovery is going to be found online. And if you're a business trying to find new clients, you need to be part of that new discovery being online. And if you're not going to be found. And what I love about that, coming back to that freedom and all of that kind of stuff that we're talking about, is that's why we really specialize with the small business owner too. So not everybody's cut out. Whilst I think there's a big opportunity to serve small business owners that are trying to free themselves up from corporate America or bigger entities, I actually also know that those same small guys that have, between 2 to say maybe 30 employees, they know their employees.
Yes.
They're a decision maker that knows their employees. They're a decision maker that knows their employees' kids. They're a decision maker that knows their employees' families and the effects that they will have when they make decisions. I'd like to think that I'm one of those employers. I know my staff inside out. I know their kids. Their kids know me. I followed some of them being born to becoming like 8 years old. So when I'm making decisions and I want to make changes and I want to do stuff, that's a big, heavy part of my decision. I'm like, okay, how is this going to affect my team? And I want to help more small business owners that can employ 20 or 30 staff members, because I think it becomes a better environment, a work environment for everybody, right? All of a sudden you have a boss who's not looking at a spreadsheet and saying, I want to cut 20% of our staff, so let's get rid of 2,000 people, because he never knows any of them and it doesn't really mean anything to him. He's just looking at a spreadsheet, and those 2,000 people that are getting cut to save a little bit of money. What does he care? He's going to get paid his $1 million bonus and everything, and you're going to be out of work. With the small business owner, they're a lot less likely to do it. For example, COVID happened to us. I didn't lay off a single person. Now, I had 2 months of major negative income because all of my clients all paused. They didn't cancel, they all paused. Then some of them started to come back online. Then we got some help from the government. Then we switched a little bit to e-commerce. And we actually ended up having a very good year in 2020.
Yep. So I was working in the agency space at that time,
right.
and in New Zealand, my agency that
Right.
I was working for at that time, and I actually was part owner of, I bought into my friend's agency company, and we had exactly that same scenario happen. Literally every single client in the span of a week put every single project and every single piece of on pause. They said, we're not canceling. We just want to see where this is going to land. We love working with you. We're probably going to kick this back off again, but we need to see where this is going to land. And then like another month after that, it was like trying to drink out of a fire hose, because they all realized, oh my God, all this stuff's going to be bought online. It's going gangbusters. We now want to actually accelerate our digital plans. We don't want to slow them down or pause them. Can you have this built tomorrow? And it's like, whoa, okay. And it was literally for 2 years like trying to drink out of a fire hose once the market.
But I've got to say, that 6-week, 2-month period where we were trying to figure out what's going on, that was very scary.
Yes.
And there was temptation to lay people off.
Totally. There was for us too.
But because I knew who they were, I was like, we've got to try to figure out how to get through this.
Yes.
And we've got to try to figure out, because I looked at it like this. I was like, if I start laying people off, we're a service-based business. We service people by giving time. It's a little bit like I've got to cut my arm off.
Yes.
Do I really want to do that? Or is my arm that bad that I need to cut it off? Or maybe in 2 weeks' time, it's going to start healing and we'll be good. That's the way I looked at it. And I was like, I'm not going to let go of these people, because as things turn around and because I get a sense that maybe things will be okay, let's just hold on. And I held on for grim life. But the reason why I'm saying that is not necessarily to talk to me, but the difference in mentality that was going on between larger entities, corporates and so forth, and even governmental, because I remember our city laid off some staff. People were getting laid off left and center. They're all going on to the unemployment benefits, right? And then obviously those were paid up through the roofs and everything, but they're all not doing anything.
Yes.
All of my staff continued with their jobs. And I think I want to be a part of helping that part of our society, or at least of our country, stay vibrant and if not grow. Because if we were able to bring, there's a place for large corporate America for certain projects and big, huge things that are going on that I'm never going to be able to do. But from a day-to-day operational standpoint, we need a lot more 30-man companies that are operating, that care about their customer base, that care about their staff, that care about their communities. And I love the fact that we serve those guys and we look after them whilst giving that business owner who wants that freedom to be free. Because, and I've spoken to some of my staff, I'm like, yo, you're really talented. Why don't you kind of start something?
Yeah.
And they're like, they don't have the risk.
Yes.
They
Tolerance.
have too much risk aversion, I
Yes.
guess. They don't want to do it. They're much more happy to work with somebody who they know has their back.
Yes.
And I take on the risk, and I take on
But you've got to go out and find the new
problem.
clients. You've got to go out and build the brand. You've got to do all those things. You've got to keep the pipeline full. You have to keep the clients happy.
Right.
Ultimately, the buck stops with you. Whereas for them, they can come in virtually, come into their office. They can do their work, and then they can put that down at the end of the day. And then,
Although I must say, Jason, I'm very lucky. I'm at a stage now where I don't even do that. I've got a sales team. I've got my marketing team. I don't manage the lead flow. I don't manage the sales. I don't manage the revenue counting. I don't manage anything. I have a team of people that do it. What I do really is I manage the culture.
Yes.
And I manage the why we're doing it. And I'm the reminder. Is that a word?
Yeah. You made it. You coined it. Let's do it.
I remind them of why we're doing what, right? And I remind the clients of who we are and why they chose us. I'm the guy that's steering the ship. I always talk about the ship analogy. Whereas if no one's sitting there looking at if you look at an old school sailing ship, right? You have your crew and they're pulling the sails up, they're repairing the sails, they're swabbing the decks, and blah, blah, blah. You might even have a helmsman. He's actually at the tiller.
Yep.
He's doing the boat. The decision maker is in a room down underneath with a whole bunch of charts in front of him. And he's going, okay, we're here. We're trying to get over to here. We got to go through here. There's a rocky formation there. There's some islands there. We got to go through here, blah, blah, blah. And that's how we're going to get there. If you're not spending any time as a business owner doing that, you actually never get there.
Yeah.
And it was funny. Like I said to you, I had dinner with that client of ours that had been with us for 10 years. She's feeling a little bit lost. And I said, let's talk about what you want. Because she was always about building the business, right? I was like, the business has got to a point now that you're doing really well. Now you need to be thinking about what you want and how the business can do that. And then the business can really start serving you. And I think that I'm probably at a stage now where I have this business that serves me and my client base. And now it's about, where do we take this vehicle? Where are we going to go? And that's where, we're doing research on AI stuff. We've got all sorts of stuff going on because we need to keep ahead of stuff, because I'm excited and deadly scared of AI all at the same time.
Equal parts.
Exactly. But it's all about charting the course, being in the captain's seat. And that is not out on the tiller. That's not at the helm. That's not swabbing the decks. It's not pulling up the sails. That's charting where you want to be. That's having conversations with a Jason Greenwood about where do I want to take my business, and you're getting your advising team together to actually move your business forward. That's the making decisions of, do I want to add a creatively disruptive to my crew? Because I'm a crew. We're a mercenary crew situation, right? You need a certain type of crew with a certain skill set. We can add that skill set to your business and it becomes your crew, right? But you need to be freed up and to be able to make good decisions, to be able to bring on a Jason, to bring on an Andy, to actually add to your crew to get you to where you want to be. And that is where I think most small businesses should be working towards, not where they're doing everything. Whilst I get what you're saying, it's my responsibility to get those leads in.
Yeah.
If the leads aren't coming in, I'm ultimately going to be holding the bag.
Yeah.
But I am lucky enough that I'm not the guy actually trying to figure out the leads anymore. I have ideas, and my team will bring me in when they're getting stuck or something's wrong. But I even have a business partner that's probably better than me at that stuff.
Yes.
So I'm very blessed, right? Like this week, I went to Indiana and bought 10 acres of land. I'm thinking about what I'm going to do with that thing.
Yeah. What an awesome place to be.
Put some corn on it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Well, that's what you do in Indiana, isn't it? Corn is, you can drive for hours and not see anything but corn in Indiana. I love Indiana. It's a great state. Many years ago, I had one of my first U.S. girlfriends. Her family was all from Indiana. She was from California, but her whole extended family was all from Indiana. And so we went back there for 4th of July a few times. And man, they know how to do 4th of July properly in the Midwest. Like the types of fireworks that they were shooting off were basically cannons. It was pretty cool. I have to say it was pretty cool, but 4th of July, pretty muggy, but it was pretty cool. Very cool place.
There is a reason why all along the Illinois border, there's a whole bunch of fireworks shops that sprout up around about May.
Yes.
In the area that we're in, it's like a beautiful rolling land. Like people think Indiana, and I think a lot of people that don't know it think of it as being quite boring. I like the thought that it's a little bit boring because it's rolling pasture land, green trees. It's just pretty green stuff. It's now turning into multicolors, right? And then obviously for about 4 months will be a bit cold with a bit of snow and so forth. But I guess without going into my personal life deeply, that's what I'm trying to build, right? I'm trying to build that freedom to be able to have this thing and build this vehicle. And what I want, and I think you want that too. And I think whilst we make money from it, Jason, I think the passion, the reason why we do it is not necessarily to make money, although that is the nice byproduct. The reason is that we're actually able to help people experience the same stuff.
Yeah.
Because I absolutely believe that everybody, anybody that really, truly wants it is willing to fall over and get back up and keep going can actually have that.
I couldn't agree more. And look, I want my life to be inspirational and aspirational, not just for my clients, but for other people that are in my sphere of influence. I have people contact me all the time that have known me for years. I've been in this industry for 25 years. I got a lot of my personal friends came through the industry. But a lot of them are starting to see, obviously I went from California, New Zealand, Mexico, traveling to the US 5, 6, 7 times a year, was in Europe for a month and a half earlier this year. So they see on Instagram and everything else, they see what I'm doing and they see where we're traveling and I'm taking my wife with me and ask, how did you do that? First of all, how did you decide to do it? And then how did you actually execute on doing that? And it's kind of, I just did it. And I went through the steps and I did my research and I managed. When I moved to New Zealand, our family, we managed, even though my grandfather was from New Zealand, we had to go through the family reunification process because my grandfather, and we went through the whole immigration process ourselves. We did all our own documentation. We applied for our permanent residency ourselves. We went through that whole rigmarole process. We did it all ourselves. Same thing coming to Mexico. We did it all ourselves. I did all the documentation. I filled it all out in Spanish. I went to the local consulate in Wellington. We went for the interview there to apply for temporary residency, took all our documentation, paid our fee, went through that rigmarole, went through the conversion process, the CONHE process of moving to Mexico within 180 days. You had to get to Mexico. You had to convert your visa stamp into your temporary residence permit. You had to get that issued on the Mexican side. Went through all that in Spanish, and none of it was easy. Like none of it was easy. There was we bought a car in Mexico City, and we made very good friends with the first Airbnb we stayed in Mexico City. We made very good friends with the Airbnb owner, and he helped me navigate because it's nothing like buying a car in New Zealand, which is easy and it's all online and it takes you about 5 minutes to transfer ownership in New Zealand. It's a piece of cake. Mexico, it's about 100 documents that you got to complete and fill out accurately to be able to transfer ownership legally in Mexico. Had my friend who I met through Airbnb help me through the process to make sure I didn't get burnt buying a vehicle in Mexico and buy some sort of thing that had been stolen before or crashed before or something like that, and I didn't know. And none of that stuff from 2023 till now, none of that stuff was easy. But we were looking at the longer-term goal in mind. We kept the longer-term vision in mind. And it was worth all the trials and the tribulations. And we tried to keep that in mind as we hit brick wall after brick wall and challenge after challenge. We tried to just keep in mind, this is the long-term vision and it's worth it. It's worth it to get through this pain. And it's just an interesting learning process. You're meeting new people. You're challenging your brain. You're creating new synapses. You're shopping for new food with new brands you've never heard of before. You're in supermarkets that you never heard of before. And so all this stuff, getting outside your comfort zone is a growth opportunity. Right. And I love that. And we try to really embrace that as the growth opportunity that it was and really understand that we were in a privileged position to be able to go through those trials and tribulations. Most people can't. They can't get out of where they live, and they've got kids, and they've got commitments, and they've got family, and they've got all these other things that they're tied into, and they can't do those things. They can't go and challenge themselves in the way that we did. And so I think it's about an attitude of gratitude goes a long way. You can't be simultaneously angry and have a heart of gratitude at the same time. It's really difficult. It's really difficult to be angry and have that sense of gratitude in your heart at the same time. It's just really hard. And so I think
But
that's what you're trying to help these business owners build, is that
right,
level of
right,
freedom.
and I think what you're saying too is you decided that you were not happy in New Zealand after what you experienced during COVID.
Yes.
You needed to move. You probably weren't 100% sure what or where,
Yes.
but you needed change.
Yes.
And there's a saying that I love to say to people because it's a very hard thing for most small business owners. Change doesn't happen without change.
Yes.
So what you did was give yourself a very, gosh, I would say a very acutely strong dose of change.
Yes.
You couldn't get much different between New Zealand and Mexico.
Yeah.
Right? Both are somewhat low-key countries.
Yeah.
There may be the similarities, but outside of the low-keyness, very different cultures, very different weather patterns, very
Language,
different.
food.
Everything's different, right? So change, and if you're not happy with something, and this is what I say to people all the time. We have clients that come in through leads, or sometimes these don't become clients, but let's say an inquiry comes in, and someone comes in and no one ever comes to us like through our marketing happy with where they're at, right? So they almost always come in, they want some help. They want either some help, or they want to improve something, or they want to change something. Many times, whilst they want the change, they want to keep doing what they're doing. They want us to sprinkle some magic sauce on them, and then they get the new result. And I always say to them, one of the things you need to understand is change will not happen without change. There's going to be change that we do. We're not going to be the only change. One of the things that I've said to clients a lot, because this has happened a lot, we've lost clients because of this. We've literally lost clients because they come to us and they say, we didn't come to you expecting us to be having to work so hard. And we're like, we're a revenue growth company. I hesitate to call ourselves a marketing company because that feels like lead generation,
Yes.
because we're not really a lead generation company. We do lead generation as a part of our business, and sales of e-com products as part of our business, but we actually do consultancy. We will help out with staffing. We'll help with revenue goal projections. We go through a whole bunch of stuff to actually help take you to where you are today, to where you want to be. Because sometimes somebody might say to us, hey, we're doing $500,000 a year. We want to make $3 million a year. And I say to them, you understand that the business that you are today probably needs to change 4 times in a major way for you to be able to adjust from being a $500,000 a year business to being a $3.5 million a year business. It's going to be multiple changes that you're going to go through. It's going to be different products, staff hiring, different ways of doing things, different processes. A lot of people say that once you get to 7 figures, to get to 8 figures, it's not the same. You don't do more of the stuff that you did to go from 4 figures to 7 figures. You don't just do more. It's actually a completely different game.
Yes.
To go from 7 figures to 8 figures. That embracing of change that you did personally,
Yes.
is something that actually, in my mind, is the magic sauce that I see with the very successful business owners, the ones that actually get there and not scared that maybe they might stumble a little bit with the beginning of that change. I'm guessing for you, Jason, when you and your wife were looking to leave New Zealand, you made a couple of false starts. You probably did a couple of things that wasn't quite right. You maybe did some stuff and you're like, oh man, I guess we learned our lesson, right? It wasn't smooth sailing. You didn't just go from Auckland, New Zealand to Pueblo, Mexico. There's a bunch of things that you went through. Some were false starts. You probably lost some money.
Yep.
You probably wasted some time. You probably blah, blah, blah. That's what happens with change, right? Those that can embrace that, because the change and the ultimate goal that you had is so important, that they will actually ultimately get there. The ones that don't have the fortitude to deal with the pitfalls, to deal with those moments where it's a little bit harder, those are the guys who typically fail. And they don't realize the amount of change that's needed to get the change that they want.
Yeah. I'll tell you that I think grit is seriously underrated in life, in business. I just think it's just underrated, full stop. I think
Yep.
I think that the challenge is that a lot of people, especially, and again, I don't want to bag on the younger generation, but it's certainly, they're used to having this be the remote control of their lives. And they're used to in 5-minute delivery through Uber Eats. They're used to everything being on tap, instant. That, and I don't even want to call it entitlement. They've grown up in a world where instant gratification was the norm. And so to have to stick at something that's hard and painful for an extended period of time, I'm at nearly 600 episodes of a 1-hour podcast, and I release 3 episodes a week. And I don't make a living off my podcast. That's not how I make my living. I make my living through consulting. And sure, podcasting and all the other content I create has opened up many doors, opportunities, partnerships. It's been amazing. And I will always do it. I will always be a creator. But the thing is that if I didn't love this, if I didn't have a vision for the future that drew me towards it like a magnet, I would never put up with the pain of producing 600 episodes of a podcast. I would never put up with the challenge of having to travel and do all these things that we do. I wouldn't put up with that if deep down inside I wasn't pursuing something that I loved. It's not always going to be sunshines and rainbows. That's not the way life is. It's not realistic to expect that. But if I didn't truly love getting up to do what I do every day, I would never be able to get through those troughs to get to the peaks if there wasn't something about that I absolutely loved and that I would do even if I wasn't getting paid. And that's the key.
I think people think, and I think maybe the cell phone generation, let's say, the Zoomers, I actually think the Gen Z is actually getting very wise very quickly. And I think they may ultimately, whilst there's a lot of people that throw a lot of heat at Gen Z, I actually think that they might be the beginning of the saving of the human races at the same time, because I think that they're realizing that there's certain things that are important, or at least some of that generation. But I think there is this element that people think, I'm here and I want to get here. And they think, okay, it's January 2026 and I want to be here by December 2026. And they think that it's going to be like this, where you and I know it's actually going to be like that. And then you'll end up here.
Yeah. The trend might be up, but there's going to be lots of peaks and troughs in between.
Yep. And when you're up here, you got to just realize, because you're not looking at it, because when you're up here, you're thinking, man, I wanted to get to here. I'm way ahead.
Yeah.
But then it crashes, and then you got to recover, and then it's this, and then you end up here. That's how it works. And what I found for myself is the longer I've been in business, the more miles I've got under my belt, the more miles that my staff have got, that these peaks and troughs are actually starting to flatten out a little bit, but they're still there. Like I said, we had 2 months during COVID where we had zero income. That was right in the middle of our 10 years that we've been in business. To go to zero income for 2 months. We've never had zero income. Even from the very first month that we opened, we actually had some income. But we had a period in the middle of our lifespan as a company where we had 2 months of zero, and that's about as bad as you can get.
Yeah.
But because we'd had other incomes throughout, because I knew that there was a future that was ahead of us, that the United States was not ending, I was like, okay, we're gonna be okay. I do know a lot of businesses, because some of them were clients of ours, that just shut up shop. Now, they got hurt a little bit more than us, because I think we had some, especially the kids' activity centers in the states that they were in. Some of the Californian ones, they were closed for 8 months. That's hard. I don't know how a business, like if we were closed for 8 months, I might be doing a different thing. That was tough. But we had a lot of businesses that were closed, that were in similar states where maybe their competition actually went out of business because they got closed down. They just said, "Oh, I'm done. I can't be doing this anymore. I'm out." But our clients stuck in there, and then 3 months down the line, they were off again, right?
Yeah.
Now, I would argue, and those people that shut up shop would probably argue as well, that maybe they had some issues going into it. And I always think that these terrible things, like any recession or major event or whatever that happens, are almost like a forest fire that goes through the business community.
Yep.
And the healthy, strong businesses, like a healthy, strong tree, they tend to survive forest fires, right?
And they grow.
All the weak, damaged, struggling trees, they get burnt up and taken out. And unfortunately, that's why, in reality, and I feel like I'm all over the place right now, but that's why, in reality, people should be thinking about building their teams around them, making sure that, do you have the right people scrubbing the decks on your ship? Do you have the right helmsman? Do you have the right people repairing the sails? Do you have the right people painting painting your ship? Do you have the right people doing all the different things that need to happen to operate a well-run ship or business? And if you do, great. If you don't, where are you going to get those people, and who's going to be advising you to do it?
Yes.
What's your advisory team? What's your actual team? What's blah, 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 blah. Because you need, as much as a really strong forest has all these different factors that are causing it to be a very strong forest. Like a strong tree, there's sunshine, there's water, there's soil, there's all these different factors coming to making them strong. What are you doing to make sure your tree, your business, is strong? So when inevitably something shitty happens, which we live in life, there was a philosopher that said once that I didn't enjoy it, but it made a lot of sense to me. That said, life is a string of difficulties with moments of happiness.
Yes.
And the better you handle the string of difficulties will greatly affect how happy you are generally in your life. The moments of happiness turn into delight because it's, oh, a child is born.
Yes.
Oh, a wedding has happened. Oh, this blah, blah, blah. But a lot of it is tough.
Yeah.
And how we handle it and what kind of team that we have around us, how we have a community that can help us pull us through. Those are all things that I think people oftentimes underestimate, especially when the going gets tough. And I know I feel like I'm maybe being a bit of a commercial for someone like yourself, Jason, but I really do believe that the Usain Bolts in business, Usain Bolt ran a 100-meter sprint by himself, but he had 30 guys helping him get there. He had trainers, he had coaches, he had medical staff, he had his
nutritionists,
finance
and
managers,
everything.
Nutritionists, everything. He didn't get there just for himself.
Yeah.
And we should be treating our businesses the same.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've got a tremendous team that are literally employees, but I also have a whole team of advisors as well. I've got my attorneys, I've got my accountants,
and all.
and I've got mentors and stuff.
Yes.
Like, right, I mentor business owners, but I've got goals, right? So I've got people that I know that are where I want to be, and I associate with them.
Yes.
Right? Because I'm looking, oh, this is what they're doing. Okay, great. That's where I want to go, right? That's what I want to be. That's what I want to do. And we've got to do that as business people. And I think if we do that, we're in a very unique place in human history where the digital world allows us to do things that has never been. We can communicate with so many people that we've never been able to do before in human history at a price that a small business owner can afford, and in ways that is more engaging and interesting than we've ever been able to do outside of standing in front of somebody. And I think right now, regardless of whether or not you're in the digital business like me and you, or a ma and pa brick and mortar, which are my clients, all businesses are in a very unique, special place that if you bring in the right team, the right expertise, and the right advisors, that you can actually have some pretty amazing things happen. And it's very exciting.
I couldn't agree more. That is the perfect place to start putting a big red bow around this episode. Very inspirational end to this, I think. It's been amazing. We had a great chat. I think more than anything else, what I would like this episode to turn out to be is if somebody is on the fence about starting their own thing, creating their own thing, contributing to their own thing, being a co-owner, a co-founder, a leader, if they're really concerned about that, I really, truly, and I'm not just saying this to be blowing smoke up somebody's behind, I actually think that there's more risk in staying where you are, especially if you're unhappy. I think there's more risk in losing your job. I think there's more risk today that you'll get cut from a big corporate, from a public company, I think there's more risk in that than there is doing your thing, especially now, especially with AI. Sam Altman famously, I think it was about 6 months ago, he said, we're in the era now with AI where the first single person $1 billion company will be born. And I tell you, as somebody who's using Lovable every day to vibe code new applications, I'm not a coder. I'm a very technical non-coder. And seeing what can be done with vibe coding platforms now, I am 100% convinced he is right. I think there's more opportunity today to run a small, successful 1, 2, 3, 4 person business today than there has been in the history of humanity. And I think that the opportunity for people to build something that gives them location freedom, financial freedom, personal freedom, whatever freedom it is that they're pursuing in their life, there is the opportunity to build that somewhere in the world today with more tools at their disposal to do that than ever before in human history. And so, if nothing
Yeah.
else, I want people to step away from this episode going, okay, I've thought about it, but I never took the steps to actually do it. And if this pushes somebody over the edge and gets them to actually dip their toes in the water of entrepreneurship, or gets them to start making changes in other, because I think what most people don't realize is when you start having success in one area of your life, that confidence bleeds over into every other area of your life. So whether that we're multidimensional people. We've got the spiritual side, we've got the emotional side, we've got the logical side. We've got so many facets to us as human beings. We've got the physical health side of things that's really important. I think people underestimate how important physical health is to good business performance, to good relationship performance. And when we start, whether it's, okay, cool, I make a commitment to myself that I'm going to start going to the gym 3 days a week, and that's just going to become part of my routine. That's it. And even if kind of everything else in someone's life is burning down around them, just grabbing something and saying, this is a commitment I'm going to make, and I'm going to stick to that. And that's an area of my life that I can at least control. That confidence of actually doing something that you said to yourself you wanted to do, that confidence will slowly start to bleed over into other areas of your life. And I think if you and I, if nothing else, if we can be an inspiration for people doing something, taking massive action for something that they've wanted to do maybe for years, but have never taken that first step to do it, then I'll feel like this was a successful episode.
And I'll just add to that my final thing based on what you just said. There's a push-pull quoting to this. The push is what you said. It's more, especially from a corporate America, I think less danger from a smaller business. That's why I spoke about that. But if you're working in corporate America, there is no security there. There is zero security. What you better do is try to get as much money as you can, as fast as you can, try to get your big pay raises, blah, blah, blah. Try to milk that corporate job for all it can be, because the average corporate job lasts 3 or 4 years max. There is no 30-year in retirement in a corporate job now. And if security, if knowing that you're not going to lose your house, if knowing that certain things can happen in your life can happen, I don't think corporate America is a good place to be anymore. I actually don't even think governmental jobs are that good. I think we've got to get back to where we were 200 years ago, where we were self-sufficient,
mercantilists,
right? Like we were craftsmen, we were this, we were that, we were able to build and do things ourselves and fulfill ourselves without plugging ourselves into something. And then as soon as that person or that organization decided that weren't valuable to them, they just cut you off, and you're like, oh shit, where am I? So that's the push. The pull is, as you said, there, technology wise, opportunity wise, there's so much for somebody that we've never had. There's so many options sometimes that I feel that there's too many options that people get a bit like, what? And where I would say to give my best advice to you is, regardless of whether you believe in God, the universe, whatever it is, really dig deep inside you and get a sense of where you should be going. Find a sense of what you really enjoy and what you should be doing. Find the flow in your life where it feels the right thing to do. And that is where you should go. And there's probably stuff, technology, digital, whatever you want to call it, there's probably opportunities in that stream that will make you happy, that you should follow into that. And we've never had that. There hasn't been as many opportunities, as many things going on. As you said, Lovable. It allows you to program and write code, right? And you don't need to be an expert, right? You have to have some knowledge, but not all the knowledge. And you can create something that you might not have been able to do 5 years ago.
Even 2 years ago.
So the push is corporate America is not going to be your friend. Look to free yourself up with your own abilities and your own income. Build multiple streams of income, right? And find the path that makes you feel good. My path, to me, where I feel like I'm doing things right, is when I 100% double down into helping small business owners get where they want to be. That when I go off of that, things feel rough. things feel like I'm not in the right direction. When I get back to that, everything starts flowing and everything becomes easy again. And I don't know if it's God or the universe telling me, this is your role, Andy, stay here.
Yeah.
Or if it's just me internally that feels so good about it that all of a sudden all the problems aren't rough anymore. They're just opportunities to get over. Find that for yourself and you'll have what I hope a very rich, wonderful life. And without the risk of financial insecurity, without the risk of all the negatives that come from being, like, as you said, which I think is you're the anti guy of this, being tethered to
Yes.
things that you don't really care about.
Yes.
Tethered to a corporation, tethered to debt, tethered to this, tethered to that. Untether yourself, tether yourself to yourself and what your dreams and what your hopes are. Work your ass off, knowing that it's not always going to be perfect, but stick to it. Because I will say my biggest thing, and I'll leave it at this, at least from what I'm saying, my biggest thing that has got me to where I am today is I am a little bit stubborn and I won't give up. I won't give up. I'm like, maybe there's times where people would look at me and say, Andy, just give it up, stop. I just haven't given up, and it has got me through those rougher periods and got me to a place where I think I'm quite comfortable. And if I stay how I am right now, I've got no problems. Do I want it to be slightly better? Yes, I think I always want it to be slightly better. I don't know if I'll ever be okay, but if I stay where I am to the day I die, I'm a lucky guy.
Wow. And the fact that you recognize that and you appreciate that and you don't take it for granted, I think is one of those lessons that we can all learn from. And optimizing for peace is something we can all learn from. No question about that. Now, as we do come down to the end of our time together, that was a great way to finish things off. If people want to get a hold of you, I'll drop a link to your LinkedIn profile and your website in the show notes. But other than that, how do you like people to reach out to you and have a conversation about getting better at life and getting better at digital and maybe you leveraging digital to create that better life?
Yeah, and consulting and all the different things that we've got going. If anything that we've spoken about is something that you're interested in, definitely go to creativelydisruptive.com. You'll see a bunch of stuff about kids' activity centers and things, or go to Ashworth Strategy. So it's not strategies, ashworthstrategy.com. Either one of those two, you can reach me through there. Or you can obviously check on my LinkedIn. I'm not as clued in on my LinkedIn as I probably should be. My LinkedIn's not open all the time. And I do get a bazillion messages that come through on it. Probably the best way if you actually do want to talk to me or the team is to go to Creatively Disruptive or ashworthstrategy.com and just send a message through, and we'll be right in touch with you probably that same day.
I love it. I love it. Now, I've started to ask this question over the last few episodes, which is, if you could snap your fingers and you could change one thing, anything about our industry, specifically e-commerce or specifically digital marketing in your case, what would it be? If you could just magically change something about our industry, what would it be?
I think I would like to see more stick-to-itness. I think in our industry, because things change so fast and because people are always looking at the grass is greener on the other side, that there are people that get into business, and it's either e-com brands or whatever it is, and they change and they never let anything grow any roots. They don't let anything germinate.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They constantly are uprooting. Oh, this isn't working. This isn't working. Oh, this is a new thing. I'm going to try that. Oh,
Crypto,
I'm going to do this.
NFTs, AI, all the rest.
The beauty of our world that we live in right now is there's so many options. Probably the negative is that there's so many options, right? So what I'd like people to do is find things that look like they're working and stick at it for a bit. Give it a chance to grow. Give you an example. We've got Kai, which is an AI for small businesses, especially service-based businesses. It's great for appointment setting and everything. It still takes about 3 months for it to get perfect. We've had clients that started with it. No, this is not working right. It's because when we first met you, it's a vanilla AI that doesn't know your business inside out. More so than anything, doesn't know your client's questions.
Mm-hmm.
And your client's questions can be all sorts of weird stuff that could come through, and your AI is going to answer it weirdly one time. But then we see that question, we adjust it and we adjust it and we adjust it. And usually by 3 months, the Kai system works like the best customer service person whose appointment setting that they've ever seen. And it works 24/7, 365 days a year. And it's amazing. But it takes 3 months. Because the weird, and even after that, there's humans always come up with some weird stuff, and an AI will always try to answer. It's not going to say, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
It's always going to say, this is what I think.
Yes.
So I'm just using that. I know it's a bit of a self-promotion there,
No, that's all good.
I would suggest on everything that you do, give it some time to work and really give it investment. Don't go into it thinking, this is probably not going to work. I'm already looking for something new. Whilst you got to keep your antennas up for the new thing because things change so fast, don't get caught into our culture with that pace of change where you don't allow things to grow, where you don't allow the roots to get in, where you don't allow things to happen, because usually it's not a on switch and everything is perfect.
No, with anything.
So that would be my change.
That's a brilliant one. I absolutely love that. Let things germinate, let them grow, give them room to breathe. Even red wine needs some time to breathe. It doesn't matter how good it is.
Right.
Even the best red wines in the world, they need a little bit of time in the bottle, they need a little bit of time in the glass, right? Couldn't agree more.
Right.
Now's where this is the opportunity for me to flip the script. I get to turn the microphone over to you. I get to let you ask me one question. Any question you like. It can be personal or professional. Mr. Andrew Seeley, what is your question for me today?
What in the frame of libertarianism and freedom and all of that kind of stuff that I know is very personally important to you, where do you want to see, what do you hope to see over the next 5 years between now and 2030? Like, just generally in the world, especially maybe the business world, if we want to get a little bit more niched. Mm-hmm. How would you love to see this happen? This next 5 years is going to be I think it's going to be a bit tumultuous. I think It's going to be a little bit all over the place. There's going to be a lot of different goods and bad things going on, like geopolitically, politically, business-wise, personally. There's going to be lots of ups and downs and all sorts of crazy stuff going on. In 5 years from today, what's your hopes of what our world will hopefully look like? I know it sounds like a big, wide-ranging thing. You answer that how you wish.
I love that question, and I can give you a very succinct answer based on my experiences here in Mexico since we moved here in 2023. So we traveled all around the country, to 20,000 kilometers in the first year that we were here, and we got to see big cities and small towns and everything in between, and we got to meet a lot of locals, and we got to really see the heart of this country, and using Mexico as a little bit of a proxy for the broader Latin American culture. There's a very clear hierarchy in Latin American culture in terms of priorities in one's life. It's very transparent, it's very clear, and it's very obvious if you spend any time here. It is God, family, community, in that order. Yep. Okay? Yep. Now, whether you're a Christian, whether you believe in God, I don't really care. But the point is that nowhere in that hierarchy of priorities is the individual. In America, it's totally the opposite. It is the individual at the top, maybe family, maybe a bit of community, and maybe a little bit of God sprinkled in for most people, right? And there's nothing wrong with rugged individuality. I think that's a really important character trait to have. I think you have to be able to be an independent thinker. I think you have to act independently when it's appropriate. But if nothing in your life feels bigger or greater than yourself, then it's pretty easy to slip into a really selfish, insular mindset. It's just really easy to have that happen. If you're the center of your own universe, that's a scary place to be, because then everything else takes a back seat to that. And one of the things that when I tell people this shocks them about Mexico until they come here and they travel there and they see it for themselves, we saw almost zero homeless people as we traveled around Mexico. Almost zero people living under bridges, living on park benches, nobody living in tents. We just didn't see that. And it happens, but it's very uncommon in Mexico to see that. It's very rare, and it's very standout. Now, there's several hundred, there's like something like 70 million stray dogs here. And dogs have a really hard life here in Mexico, homeless dogs. but people don't. And one of the reasons for that is because a Mexican family will, if one of their family members hits hard times, or they lose their job, or they run out of money and they lose their house, or whatever it might be, they're just not going to let them live on the street. There's zero expectation the government's going to provide the safety net. The family and the church provide the safety net to each other. And there's pros and cons to that too. But I just think that if the world could move slightly more in the direction of having priorities in life that were not just themselves and their immediate joy and instant gratification and their happiness and their peace, but they thought about the slightly greater responsibility that they have to something outside of themselves, I think the world would be a better place, just generally speaking. There's always this tension for me in my mind between rugged individualism and independence and the laissez-faire mindset and responsibility to something greater than yourself. And to me, living in that tension feels like the right place to be for me. And that's something I would like to see the world wrestle with a little bit more, because I think we can all learn from each other, right? I think the Americans can learn from the Mexicans. I think the Mexicans can learn from the Americans. I think the Americans can learn from the French. I think we can all, as I've traveled, and I've traveled extensively around the world, not as extensively as I'd like to, and I'm going to continue traveling till the day I die. But there's so many commonalities. There's so many more things that bind us together than there is that are different. I traveled all over Muslim countries. We went to Turkey and we went to Morocco and everything else. And still, the reality is that most people, not all, but the vast majority of people on this planet, they just want to live a happy, healthy life with their family. They want to make enough money to live a decent life. Very few people I have met want to be crazy rich. They just want to have a roof over their head. They want to not be worrying about where clean water is going to come from. They don't want to worry about where their next meal is going to come from. They want to have a little bit of joy. They want to be able to do some fun things with their kids, and that's it. And I think if we can keep that at the forefront of our mind, and I tell you, what breaks down ignorance and what breaks down xenophobia and all the other negative things that humans are prone to at times, the thing that I see breaking that down the fastest is travel. That is literally, I think, if you want to build your empathy muscle and you want to build your empathy gene, the fastest way to do that is to freaking travel and meet people from as many different cultures and countries as you possibly can, eat as much different food as you possibly can, see as many different landscapes as you possibly can, and literally walk a mile in their shoes. Literally. And talk to them and have conversations with them and break bread with them. It's the quickest way to eliminate ignorance from culture that I can think of.
Yeah. And I think those that think that they're not ignorant are usually the most ignorant.
Correct. Correct. I call it ignorant arrogance. That's the term I use for people that think they know the world really well, but they've never been outside of their hometown or never been outside of their home state. So listen, man, this has been an absolutely fabulous conversation. Super appreciate your time. Next time you're down here in Mexico, look me up. First round of margaritas.
Definitely.
And I can't wait to speak to you again soon. Thank you so much. If you'd like to get mentored by Jason for free, head over to greenwoodconsulting.net, scroll to the bottom of the page, and click Get Mentored by Jason.